Hi, this is Rahman Sheikh. Welcome to Fortnightly Railway Transportation Systems Podcast. I am the host and railway systems specialist working in this industry for 24 years and counting. This podcast is primarily focused on railway experts who have vast amount of experience and contributed greatly to this amazing industry. This is not a technical seminar but focuses on feel good stories, individual journeys, their success and failures, motivating younger generation to kickstart their career in railways and creating a sense of pride for the railway people who devoted their lives on the most environment friendly public transportation. Welcome, dear listeners, to another insightful episode of our Railway Transportation Systems podcast. Today, we have the privilege of hosting a distinguished guest with a wealth of experience in the field of transportation. Joining us is Andy Byford, currently the Senior Vice President of High Speed Rail Development at Amtrak. Andy's impressive career in transportation spans over 3 decades and 3 continents, showcasing his passion and dedication to advancing public transit systems. He embarked on his journey in 1989 at London Underground, starting as a uniformed station foreman and steadily progressing to become the general manager of Bakerloo Central and Victoria lines. Throughout his career, Andy has held key positions including operations and safety director for 2 UK mainline train operating companies. His international experience took him to Sydney, where he served as the Chief Operating Officer of Australia's largest railway network. He then ventured to Canada, leading the Toronto Transit Commission before taking on the role of President of New York City Transit, overseeing the busiest and largest transit system in North America. After a successful stint as Commissioner at Transport for London, Andy returned to the forefront in his current role at Amtrak, spearheading high-speed rail development efforts. His strategic leadership has not only navigated organizations through challenging times such as pandemic, but has also instrumental in financial rebuilding and successful opening of significant projects like the Elizabeth Line. Born and raised in Plymouth, Andy Byford is a graduate of the University of Leicester. His extensive and varied experiences uniquely position him as a thought leader in the realm of railway transportation. Join us, we delve into the insights, challenges, and prospects of high-speed rail development with the seasoned professional Andy Byford. Hi Andy, welcome to Railway Transportation.
Hey Ryman, thank you so much. It's an honor to be on your show. I'm really looking forward to the pod.
Same, me too, Andy, and I really appreciate. I know you are a busy person. Thank you for taking the time out and sharing your wisdom to our listeners.
You're most welcome.
Let's start with my first question. Can you share insights into the current status of high-speed rail development in the United States and Amtrak's role in advancing this crucial transportation infrastructure?
Sure. Well, look, I'd describe it as the most exciting time to be in the high-speed rail space in the US. And why do I say that? Well, because I think now is the time. There's probably never been a better chance to help get the USA into the high-speed rail club. When you think about across the world, high-speed rail, which really started with the Shinkansen back in the 1960s with the wonderful bullet train that the Japanese developed and that's still operating on a flawless basis over in Japan. Since then, high-speed systems have flourished throughout Europe, throughout Asia, even in Africa, so Morocco, South Africa. But the one standout really has been the United States, which once upon a time led the world in fastest trains. I mean, there were lots of very, very famous fast trains across the USA. But then in about the 50s, the money and the attention all very much went to developing the interstate highway system across the US and also in the extensive aviation network that people still use to this day. So to a certain extent, railways became the poor relation. Now, in 1971, I think a key decision was taken just as it looked as though passenger railroads were going to wither on the vine in the United States. The freight railways didn't really want to carry passengers anymore. There was no real government support at the time for railroads. It was seen to be an industry and a technology of the past. The future was very much seen as aviation and cars. At that point, some visionary politicians, some visionary senators and Congress people came together to say, no, that cannot happen, not in the United States. We've got to save passenger railroads. So Amtrak was formed in 1971 and has been the national railroad provider since then, going, I think, from strength to strength, including in fairly recent times, the rollout of the first high-speed train in North America, which was the Acela, which still runs to this day. A fabulous service. It goes from Boston to Washington, D.C. The big difference really between the Acela, of which we're very proud at Amtrak, and high-speed systems across the world. The Acela itself is a high-speed train. It's capable of 150 mile an hour running. But the infrastructure upon it which is built, the track, the catenary, sort of curvaceous nature of the line, the fact that it goes through very long and old tunnels where the train has to really slow down, means that it's not really what I would call a true high-speed railway. It is, there are sections where it can go quickly, but what we're really talking about now is true high speed. So that brings us up to today, and there are a number of very exciting developments over in California high-speed rail project being built, which will ultimately link San Francisco and Los Angeles. At the moment, the central section is well advanced. That's between Bakersfield and Mercado, and that will open around 2030. So that's a development. Brightline, the private operator here in the US, has opened a higher speed railway between West Palm Beach and Orlando, and they've got very ambitious plans to build a dedicated route between Las Vegas and Los Angeles through the desert. But Amtrak's still very much involved, and that brought me to this job. I was very excited to be asked to spearhead the US national rail, high-speed rail effort, and my mandate is to identify and then develop corridors that we believe are perfect for high-speed operation. And the specific project I'm looking at, which I'm sure we'll get to, is Dallas to Houston. So exciting times. Coming from a period not so long ago in the 70s where it looked as though passenger railroads were going to be a thing of the past. Suddenly, we've got lots of talk about high speed, lots of investment into Amtrak, and we're determined to make high speed a reality here in the US.
Great insights, Andy. I think under your leadership, definitely strength by strength, you're gonna deliver it, and I think Amtrak has found the right person to lead them. Is that the reason why in US you are called as Train Daddy?
Train Daddy actually came about under a slightly different guise. It was when I was the president of New York City Transit. I loved being in New York, and I think I developed a real bond with the people of New York. They liked the fact that they had someone who they could identify as trying to turn around the system. It's a fabulous system, but it really needs investment. So we set about, and it was not just me, it was a whole team. We set about the total top to bottom modernization of New York City Transit, which I identified really as needing four things. One, fully re-signal the subway. Two, reimagine the bus network to get people riding the buses again. Three, make the system fully accessible. And four, do all of that by developing and cherishing the wonderful staff of New York City Transit to provide excellent customer service, which they do day in and day out. And that job was very high profile, and it brought me to the public's attention. I think people were slightly intrigued to have a Brit running the subway and the rest of transit. And also they liked the fact that I was out and about. I was out on the stations talking to customers, sometimes having to do media. And someone, we still to this day don't know who, came up with these stickers, which rather bizarrely had a picture of a subway train with my face superimposed on the front of them, and even more bizarrely wearing lipstick, which I really didn't quite understand. These stickers said, Train Daddy loves you very much, and the name stuck, and it's certainly a source of amusement to my friends and family.
What a great story. People do really love you, Andy. Thanks for doing such a great work. People of US are really blessed to have you.
Well, it's my absolute honor to be back here. And I was another reason I chose the job with Amtrak. I have various options, having left TfL after a fabulous 2.5 years back in London. I really wanted to give something back to the US. I was honored to be given a green card. Obviously, I had to apply for that, but I have a self-sponsored green card. I'm humbled to have received a green card from the US government. So although there were other options available to me, maybe consultancy, maybe go and run another transit system, when Amtrak approached me about this high-speed role, travel. One, that really whetted my appetite. Back to what we were saying at the start, that if there was ever a time for high speed to take off in this country, I believe that the environment and the circumstances are right now. And two, because it's a national role, and I feel that I can give back to the fabulous people of the US. They're so kind, they're so generous. I mean, I will always love New Yorkers to the day I die. That was a place I was very happy. And so if I can just do my small bit, and it's a huge team effort, if I can do my small bit to help make the case for high speed, and also work with my fabulous 23,000 colleagues at Amtrak in the broader modernization of Amtrak, which is well underway, new fleet or enhanced routes, upgrades to infrastructure and technology, very ambitious goal that my CEO, Stephen Gardner, has set of a doubling of ridership to 66 million riders by 2040, then my work here will be done. We're a fabulous team. We're determined to continue to have America's railroad be Amtrak.
You would be successful in achieving this, Andy. Drawing from your extensive international experience, how do you see the challenges and opportunities for implementing high-speed rail in North America compared to the other regions you worked in?
Well, I think some of the challenges are germane. They're common. You've got to have lots of money. You've got to have political will. And that political will and that funding has to be sustained. You can't have lots and lots of money one day, large richesse one day, and then sort of poverty the next day. Famine and feast funding just does not work when you're talking about long-term intensive projects that inevitably take a long time to conceive and build. So you need that stabilized funding. It's got public and political support. So those sound easy to obtain. They're not, because there are controversies around quantum, and you've got to have ideally bipartisan around high speed, because it does cost a lot. And sometimes people say, well, why do we need to do this? We've got perfectly good roads and aviation. But my argument would be that it's the best way over a certain distance. And we're not talking about New York to LA, that you're going to fly that. But you're talking between 2 to maybe 800 miles between centers of significant population. You're looking for reasonably flat topography, ideally. And if you can demonstrate you've got a compelling market, that is without question, the most environmentally friendly, highest capacity, I'm going to argue the safest form of travel. So there are myriad benefits, and that goes beyond just travel time. That also delivers massive environmental, societal, and economic benefits, and that's been proven in many countries the world over. But I think the other unique challenge to the US in particular is because people are so wedded to their cars and so used to flying, it is difficult to get people to embrace the concept of high-speed rail when, with the greatest of respect, and I genuinely mean that, really, truthfully, respectfully, there are people who just don't understand what it is, high-speed rail, and how could they? If you've never actually experienced it, if you've never been to a country where you can go at very high speeds, 200 miles an hour plus, from downtown to downtown in a state-of-the-art train with onboard catering and every facility that you could want, how would you know what that is? How can you back it? So a big part of our job will be to do a roadshow around the US to use data to show what the economic benefits are, what the travel time benefits are, and to make the case that we're not talking about replacing cars or planes, but this would be a massive contribution and addition to not only the US transport offer, but also it would be a huge integrated part of what Amtrak does. We've already got long distance services, we've got Araceli, we've got state supported services, and we've got local bus services. And this would be part of that transport jigsaw.
Wow. Great challenges plus justification, Andy. Looking to your answer, I can see your pure love to rail. Is that the reason you do not own a car to date?
Well, I must confess, full transparency, for the first time in our lives, my wife and I, we actually did buy a car only, I'm going to say 3 months ago, because we're living in a place now where you really kind of have to have a car down in Florida, although my job is in DC and I'm here most of the time, but our home is in Florida. So we have bought a car, but one of the reasons I think people call me train daddy is because they know throughout my whole life I've relied on public transport. I actually do not have a driving license and I've got no plans to get one. My lovely wife drives me around and that's fine. She likes to do that and I like riding the trains. That's my job. I think it's a poor show if a transport professional, say a CEO of a transit system or even an SVP of a national system like Amtrak. It's pretty poor if that person doesn't use the product, meet the customers, cherish your colleagues, spend time on the train, see what works, see what doesn't work. That's what I'm going to carry on doing until further notice.
Whoever gave you the title Train Daddy suits you, Andy. Hats off to him. Given your past roles in major transit systems, how do you approach the integration of high-speed rail with the existing transportation networks to ensure the seamless connectivity?
Well, that's a very good question. And it goes right to the hub of, or the nub rather, of what high speed has to be. I've already talked about some of the characteristics. You're looking for, pretty much dedicated infrastructure, pretty much a straight line. You can have shallow curves, but fully enclosed, no crossings, no interlining, no freight trains, none of that stuff. But the other characteristic you've got to have is excellent first and last mile connections at either end. Ideally, you look to terminate in sort of downtown in a city. That's not always possible, and that's okay, as long as you have excellent interchange with other mainline railway services, with transit, such as metros or subways, streetcars perhaps, light rail, buses, and other modes such as bikes or multiple user apps like Uber and Lyft. You've got to make sure that there is seamless interchange. If you drop someone off in the middle of nowhere, they're not going to feel safe, and you lose the benefit, which is supposed to be speed and journey time. And you want it to be a pleasant environment. You want it to be a safe environment. You want it to appeal to all demographics. So everyone should feel safe using public transit. And certainly in any of the work that we're doing, we're determined that any high-speed route we develop will be fully integrated, not only with other modes, but also within the existing Amtrak system. It's not meant to be a standalone. It's not even meant to be the jewel in the crown. It is meant to be part of that comprehensive offer that Amtrak already makes across the United States. So that is a key consideration for any high-speed route.
Wow, great strategies, planning, collaborations, no doubt, Andy. I think this is one of the main reasons why you got Lifetime Achievement Award by Leicester University for public transportation.
I was so taken aback when my alma mater did that. That was just a bolt out of the blue. I was very proud to be, and I'm very proud to be, a graduate of Leicester University. I had 4 wonderful years there. And out of the blue, the university said, look, we're aware of your career. You have this unique achievement of having run the largest transit systems in the US, Canada, and the UK. And on a day-to-day basis, Australia is the chief operating officer. And I was humbled and honored to be given that award. It was something that will stay with me for the rest of my life. I remember flying over to London, and we bought a table, my wife and I, treated my old friends from university. They came along to see me go up and get the award, and it sits proudly on my desk. I'm very honored to have received it. But look, that is a reflection more of the colleagues that I've worked with. You can't do anything on your own. You bring your own views, you bring your own skills to any job. But I would not be where I am today had it not been for the passion and the professionalism and the efforts of now tens of thousands of colleagues from the wonderful, iconic organizations that I've worked for. And certainly now I've landed on my feet because the people at Amtrak are seriously impressive. So hopefully we can deliver another success story. Any success we have, I'll dedicate to them.
You would surely deliver it, Andy, and I can see a leader speaking. Anyway, congratulations, and you pretty much deserve it. Moreover, I'll move to my next question. As a senior vice president for high-speed rail development at Amtrak, what key initiatives or projects are currently underway, and what impact do you anticipate these will have on the future rail travel in the United States?
Great. Well, I can talk about one in particular. I can't go into too much detail because there are some elements that are commercially sensitive. But let me tell you what is in the public domain, which is that we have been working on a proposed high-speed route between the cities of Dallas and Houston in Texas. They tick all the boxes. The two cities are the 4th and 5th fastest growing metropolises in the US, respectively. So they're big population base at either end. So that's good. They're in the sweet spot of the distance that you're looking, which again, a bit too long to drive, too short to fly. So they're 240 miles apart. It's relatively straightforward topography. What else? It's a city pairing that suffers from suboptimal modal alternatives. Of course, you can drive, you can fly, but the flights are very congested. The airports are very congested. And the main road is the Interstate 45. That is a challenge. challenge. It's a congested route with not the best of safety records. So we believe that we can get that route developed. It's the ideal set of variables. And the proposal is the one that we're working on. It gets even more exciting because not only would it be the first dedicated high-speed route for the US, along with the Brightline and Californian systems that are also being developed at the same time, but it would be certainly the first one for Amtrak. It would deploy, subject to getting a waiver from the US government, it would deploy the legendary Shinkansen train, the Japanese bullet train. So that would travel at a minimum of 205 miles an hour. Over that 240 miles with one intermediate stop, that would be a 90-minute journey, just under, so sub 90 minutes. And that would make it the highest average speed service in the world, which would be an absolute fillip for not only the US, but the state of Texas. So it's nowhere near a done deal. We've got to still finish off the business case. I think the business case looks really good. We've clearly got to get political support, and there is political support in the cities, but that it's not universal along the route. We've got to the small matter of putting together a huge funding package. But the good news is that so far we're making pretty good progress, and we've got a president who's very much into high-speed rail and loves Amtrak. So I'm confident we can certainly make that one a go. That's not the only route we're looking at. I think there are plenty of other city pairings in the US that would make for perfect consideration in terms of a high-speed link. Pacific Northwest, say Vancouver down to Eugene in Oregon. There are other candidates. So I think we're going to be busy. And here's my prediction. If we can pull this off and we can get one of these routes up and running, and let's say it was Dallas to Houston, using the Shinkansen with all of the legendary, unprecedented safety and reliability benefits that brings. If we could pull that off and we can get one of these routes up and running, and let's say it was Dallas to Houston, using the Shinkansen with all of the legendary, unprecedented safety and reliability benefits that brings. If we could pull that off, I think other city mayors and other city pairs will clamor for one of their own. I think Americans will be blown away by the fact that you could, if you live in Dallas, you could go and watch a football match in Houston and have dinner that night and still come home. Try doing that in the car. Try doing that on the plane. It's not going to happen.
I think you can pull it up, Andy. I heard that everything you touch turns into gold. So I believe you would be successful.
Again, a good team effort. We're a great team. I've worked with some fabulous colleagues over the years.
So there's one simple follow-up question, Andy, for you. In your experience, how crucial is public-private collaboration in the successful implementation and expansion of high-speed rail networks, and what strategies do you employ to foster such partnerships? Because you spoke about commercial and government and regulatory.
I personally think there's no way that you can build and operate, or certainly not build, a high-speed route with all of the cost that brings from the public purse. I mean, maybe, there are countries that have done it. China is a classic example. Chinese government has spent trillions of dollars on an amazing high-speed network from a standing start. It's a very different environment over there. So I think with the US, if you can combine the expertise of Amtrak, and now more than 50 years of operation, and our access to government and a certain advantageous position with government in terms of funding, with private sector expertise, and let's take Dallas to Houston as an example, if we are able to deploy Shinkansen technology, that's great technology transfer into the US. That will create thousands of US jobs. And also, you leverage expertise from that foreign country. And there are others as well, the Germans, the Italians, they have fantastic expertise in this space. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel. I think if you can get that kind of public and private partnership going well, you can have an unbeatable combination. So how do we go about it? Well, you need to do your homework, study the data. You need to make sure that you get the right partners, but also critically, it's not just having the right partners, it's having the right partnership ethos. And you made reference in your opener to the Elizabeth line. Well, I recall very clearly running that project towards the end. We got it across the line. Her Majesty the Queen opened it, which was fantastic. We got that line open, and we also delivered what's called the Spadina subway extension in Toronto when I was CEO of the Toronto Transit Commission. We got that done through partnership working. You can't have a situation, it never works, if you have the client just yelling at or lording it over contractors and just working strictly to the contract. It's got to be a partnership approach where you tap the strengths of each party. Each party plays to their strengths to the ultimate benefit benefit of the project and the ultimate benefit of the community that it's intended to serve.
Wow, great answer, Andy. Thanks for sharing those thoughts, especially that partnership approach really touched me. Great insights. I want to move to the next phase of the project delivery, which is how about you with advancements in technology and innovation? What role do you see for digitalization and smart technologies in enhancing the efficiency and safety of high-speed rail operations?
Well, I mean, it's a very interesting space in which to work. It's constantly evolving. I mean, I think back through my career, what railways used to be like, and I started as a station foreman at Regent's Park Station on the Bakerloo in 1989, as you mentioned. Back then, we didn't have CCTV. We didn't have station radios. I'm not sure, did we even have automated gates? I think the automated gates were just coming in, but it was very rudimentary. There really weren't that many systems, and railroad technology has come on leaps and bounds in every single aspect. You look at how advanced modern train sets are. You know, I talked about the Shinkansen. There are other fabulous trains out there across the various countries of the world and various manufacturers. But you look also at technological development in signaling. Once upon a time was fixed block signaling, very much dependent on people pulling levers in signal boxes. That migrated in the 60s to push-pull operation on panels, but was still fixed block. A train could not move into a signaling block until the preceding train had moved out of it. And now an in-cab signaling where the train doesn't rely on line-side signals, rather the commands are given to the driver via balises on the track, or devices on the track that can tell absolute detail, minute detail, where a train is, what its proximity is to the train in front and, for that matter, the one behind, what the relative speeds are. And that way it can determine what the braking curve should look like, but also what the acceleration curve should look like. The upside of that is you get so much more line capacity, because rather than having a set amount of trains very much reliant on the fixed blocks that I just described, you can move trains safely, very closely up together. And a good example of that doesn't just work on mainline railways is the Victoria line in London, where there's a train every something like 90 seconds. It's relentless. The service is just relentless. If you look up the tunnel, you can see red tail lights disappearing. There's a train in the platform and there's white lights approaching. It is just relentless. And that's how you carry the masses. And that's a system that's been developed over time. And who knows where the next technology will come from. The other big technological advance, of course, is PTC here in the US, Positive Train Control. Again, it's a safety system that is meant to introduce very, very high levels of safety integrity into the system, such that trains do not come into contact with each other. That's obviously what you want to avoid, but you can still maximize line capacity and, for that matter, run at very high speeds. So it's a very dynamic industry, and we're very blessed to have a lot of very, very capable people in there constantly pushing the boundaries and making it ever safer and ever more reliable and increasing its capacity.
Oh, great answer, Andy. It looks like an engineer is speaking.
Oh, no, I'm a linguist, actually, believe it. I'm not an engineer. People often assume that you're an engineer or a lawyer or a financier. Believe it or not, my degree is in French and German. And so somehow I've ended up running these transit organizations. But it's been a great industry. It's one of which I'm very proud, and forever fill in a form on a customs form where it says, you fill in the boxes, name and your address and stuff. And it says you have to put down your profession. I never write executive. I write railwayman, because that's what I am.
You are highly talented. Andy, I think I got a couple of other questions, but pretty much you covered it. But there is one key important question which I would like to ask you. Given your extensive experience in high-speed rail, could you provide insights and reflections on the recent decision to cancel portions of High-Speed 2 project in the UK? And additionally, how do you approach the business case evaluation for high-speed rail in Australia, drawing upon your expertise in navigating similar challenges in different parts of the world?
Well, let's deal with High Speed 2 first of all. I mean, it's a very fast-moving story, and only the other day I read that maybe the northern portion of High Speed 2 might in fact be back on. So I think this movie has not yet ended. I think it may well be that things could still change for the positive again. But the government have made their decision. These are tough times. The costs of high speed to have increased a lot, and the UK faces multiple economic challenges. So in their wisdom, the government decided that for now the service would terminate at Birmingham, the North End, and actually potentially a place called Old Oak Common in the west of London, while it's decided whether or not to push it through to London Euston Station, because that also has gone up in cost. I do think that would be a missed opportunity. Ultimately, the original plan was to push north from Birmingham on one leg up to Liverpool and Manchester, and the other leg to Leeds, and that would have had huge beneficial economic impact to the north of England and the Midlands for that matter. So I hope one day that will happen. The one thing I really do hope is that the route gets safeguarded. I have heard that some of the properties are now being released back into the market, which I think, again, would be a missed opportunity. But again, it's all about choices. It's about economic choices. I do think that there is a risk of false economy, that if you do cancel something, but then you go back to it in a few years' time, there's one thing that's certain. It will cost exponentially more because that's just the nature of the beast. And you look at the Channel Tunnel had so many stop-starts. In fact, at one point, tunneling had been started on the Channel Tunnel, and the big hole basically got filled in. So eventually, as we all know, the Channel Tunnel was opened. It's a massive economic success and people love it, but cost more in the end. So I do think that there's always that balance, for short-term economic relief, are you creating longer-term economic pain? As for Australia, the obvious line for high speed would be something like Brisbane, Newcastle, even Townsville possibly, but Brisbane, Newcastle, Sydney, Wollongong, Melbourne, maybe with a spur to Canberra. That's the compelling corridor because a lot of the Australian population is clustered on the east coast. And a big shout out to all the Aussies out there. I loved living in Australia. It was absolutely fabulous, and Australian people are great. And go South Sydney if there's any Rabbitohs fans out there. The difficulty, I think, for Australia, though, will be you really do have to have, in order to make the business case, you've got to have the population and the passenger numbers in order to justify what would be a huge expense. You're going through some pretty difficult terrain between some of those city pairings. So I'm not saying it's impossible, but someone smarter than me is going to have to really study the business case in terms of how you would achieve that very, very fast route between, let's say, Sydney and Melbourne. You've got the what was the XPT service already, New South Wales Trains, what used to be CountryLink, but that is a long way. It's reasonably okay topography, but that would cost a lot of money to build the true high-speed route with full enclosure, so no risk of running into kangaroos or anything like that would be required. So it's not impossible, but I think it's some way off.
Wow, great insights, Andy. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. Before I let you go, I would like to ask one question. In this current attention-seeking world, why are you not on any social media, especially LinkedIn?
I used to be. Years ago, I was on LinkedIn. Funny enough, when I lived in Australia, because down in Oz, it was, it's a wonderful place to live. But the only problem is you are the other side of the world and even a different day sometimes to your folks back home. So I was on LinkedIn. I was also on Facebook for a while, but I just found I couldn't keep up with it. LinkedIn in particular, I just couldn't keep up with it. I've been doing these busy roles, and goodness knows I work long hours sometimes. The days just fly. And unless you just don't want to give your spouse any time of the day and you just want to be looking at your phone all day, I'd get home from work and, the last thing really I wanted to do, plowing through LinkedIn messages, responding to requests for linkage, or reading what admittedly were often very interesting articles. So it was mainly just, being a bit overwhelmed with trying to keep up with things on social media. Secondly, I think it's because I've had very high profile roles at, say, for example, New York City Transit and TfL. So it's nice to maintain a bit of privacy. And thirdly, it can be toxic. It can be slightly demoralizing, that you get a lot of interesting stuff on social media, but equally you get some things that I find just make you angry or anxious. And I love my job. I love the industry, but it's good to have downtime. I follow my football team, Plymouth Argyle FC. Just a slight correction, by the way. I wasn't born in Plymouth, but I grew up in Plymouth. Plymouth, and I spent time with my beautiful wife of 30 years this year. So I hope that answers it. If people want me, they know where to get me. So I'm confident that anyone who really wants to talk to me just has to figure out where I am, and I always give them the courtesy of a response.
You did responded me. So thank you for your time and thank you for sharing your wisdom with us on this platform, Andy.
You are most welcome, Rahman. That time just flew. I could have talked for another hour. It was fabulous. So I hope your listeners enjoy what we had to talk about today.
I believe everyone listening to this podcast has got something to take away from today's discussion. If you like this podcast, please listen, follow, and share this podcast within your network. If you believe we should be sharing your story or someone within your network, there is a railway leader who should be here sharing his or her contribution to this industry, contact me on railwaytransportationsystems@gmail.com. Thank you for your time today. See you next fortnight. Until then, stay safe and take care of yourself.